What's the difference between a PEO and like a traditional HR outsource agency?
A lot of times people have the misperception that a PEO is going to replace an HR function. And the PEO is really there to alleviate some of the responsibilities of HR. And what I mean by this is there's a lot of times that HR professionals are doing things via pen and paper, manually entering things into 3 or 4 different systems, and they don't speak to one another. So with the PEO, it's really a consolidated platform that's going to handle a lot of your back office admin tasks. So just reduces a lot of the paperwork and the duplication.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today, we're excited to have Kevin Dolph with us. He's a seasoned leader in HR and payroll. He's the driving force behind ExpertPEO, trusted advisor to small, mid-sized, and niche businesses. He's helped countless companies streamline their operations through tailored PEO solutions. ExpertPEO specializes in simplified payroll, providing Fortune 500 level benefits, reducing workers' comp costs, offering expert HR guidance backed by certified professionals. He has a deep understanding of this landscape. That's why we wanted to have him on today. Thanks for coming on, Kevin.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Yeah. Can you explain what a PEO, a professional employer organization, is and how it can benefit small and mid-sized businesses, especially startups?
Sure. So a PEO, as you just mentioned, stands for Professional Employer Organization, and they work closely with small and mid-sized businesses. I get asked all the time, what is the relationship between a PEO and an employer? And it's a co-employment relationship. So what this means is that the PEO will assume all risks related to compliance and payroll. They are legally required to do this. Additionally, the employer will get access to the PEO's robust benefit offering. Oftentimes, medical insurance will be 30 to 40% less than what you're currently paying. And the reason behind this is you're now getting access to large group health insurance rates. So the PEO has significant buying power with the carrier, which is obviously something that you as a small group do not have access to.
So interesting. So it's basically a means of increasing your buying power by organizing with a larger organization. What's the difference between a PEO and like a traditional HR outsource agency?
So a lot of times people have the misperception that a PEO is going to replace an HR function. And the PEO is really there to alleviate some of the responsibilities of HR. And what I mean by this is there's a lot of times that HR professionals are doing things via pen and paper, manually entering things into 3 or 4 different systems, and they don't speak to one another. So with the PEO, it's really a consolidated platform that's going to handle a lot of your back office admin tasks. So it just reduces a lot of the paperwork and the duplication.
My understanding is you work more on the buy side of the equation. Tell us about that for people who don't know, like what's this buy side angle versus the sell side angle?
It's really important to note that PEOs are not one size fit all, right? And when you're dealing with an internal sales rep at the PEO, oftentimes they try and slam in a square peg into a round hole, and it results in the employer not finding the right solution for them. So that's why what makes us unique is that we don't work for the PEO. We work for you, the client. We have 13 PEOs on our platform, and we do a dive and get a comprehensive understanding of what the needs of your organization are. And then we'll be able to find the right PEO for you as opposed to just representing one PEO.
That's an interesting angle. It's kind of more of this buy side kind of broker angle. So what are some common challenges that businesses and startups face when choosing one of these organizations? And how do you guys specifically help the startups overcome them?
The problem is that when trying to find the right PEO solution it's extremely overwhelming for the employee. If they want to go to 4 different PEOs and get 4 different quotes and proposals, they're dealing with 4 different sales reps. They get 4 different proposals, and it's very hard to understand each proposal because they're each laid out differently and what you're exactly paying. So at ExpertPEO, we handle that entire process on behalf of the employer, where we spreadsheet what their current costs are and what their costs would be with the different PEO solutions.
Can you share an example without naming the company, obviously, that you represented that saw significant growth and or savings after partnering with the correct PEO?
Yeah, so I love sharing stories about, call it client success, and we're industry agnostic in terms of who we work with. So obviously we have a strong presence in the VC space, and we do a lot of work with nonprofits and in financial services. So I kind of like to touch upon 2 stories that I like to tell. The first is a nonprofit that I got looped in with, and they were facing budget cuts, and They looked like they were going to have to reduce headcount to meet the new budget constraints. And we did an RFP on behalf of the client. We saved them roughly $280,000 in medical costs. And in doing so, they were able to prevent having to have any layoffs. So it was pretty powerful to me to know that, I was able to save people's jobs by reducing the medical costs. So that was great. Wow. Another example, I was working with a founder and they were using Gusto, which has the look and feel of a PEO, but it doesn't get you access to the robust Fortune 500 like benefits. And he had a hard time with attracting and retaining talent simply because his benefit package didn't stack up. So we did an RFP on behalf of the startup. We found the right PEO for him. He found a year later that the retention of his employees were significantly higher, and he grew headcount by 30%. So he's been one of our biggest advocates on the PEO front.
How has this payroll landscape changed in the last 5 or 10 years? You've been kind of around the space for a while, and this is a why now question. Why expert PEO? Why now?
Yeah. So there's really been a push to automation, right? Over the past 10 years, the landscape's obviously changed a lot, but it's amazing to me how many employers still use pen and paper, right? You speak to any HR professional or someone in finance, and they all want to push towards automation. So that's really where we've seen the trend, and the PEO automates everything for you. There's no more pen and paper, right? Everything from onboarding, offboarding, performance management, time and attendance, applicant tracking, all of those stuff is automated, and there's no longer, Excel spreadsheets for you keeping track of your employees' PTO, right? So it's really making yourself current with technology.
Going back to benefits, especially for small, mid-sized kind of startups, fast-growing startups, what trends are you seeing in the benefit space?
Yeah, so the two most common questions or concerns among employers that's really important to their employees is one, mental health. What are the mental health services that the PEO will provide, or the insurance carrier? And two, fertility. Right. Those are the two most common questions that I receive. And all of the PEOs that I partner with have EAP programs, which stands for Employee Assistance Programs. They'll have access to a 24/7 mental health provider. If it's Friday night and you just need someone to speak to, you'll be able to do so. And then the majority of the PEOs that are on my platform, they also provide fertility coverage. Those are the two most common that I get.
How important is offering these Fortune 500 style benefits? I've worked at big tech before I became a VC, and we had just the benefits were off the charts. How important is it for these smaller companies in this hiring market to provide these kind of benefits?
Yeah, I mean, it lets them be competitive, right? It's hard enough to be able to compete with the Googles of the world, but if you can have a benefit package that stacks up to that of a Google and Amazon and Microsoft, it certainly levels the playing field a little bit. I used the example before of Gusto, and while they do have a nice payroll platform, they don't have the same type of benefit offerings that a PEO does.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then what about compliance? A hybrid and remote first kind of culture out there with startups. And so you might have employees spread around the country. So there's different regulatory landscapes and to consider, and even around the world. How does ExpertPEO help these startups stay compliant?
So since the start of COVID, remote work has boomed. Right. And we've seen a huge increase in popularity in PEOs, right? Where employers would say, we are now in 30 different states, and it's impossible for us to keep track of each state specific compliance requirement, each quarterly state filing for SUI and doing SUI registrations. So it's the PEO is legally required to keep you in compliance. So the team at the PEO is studying the rules and the changes day in and day out, and then staying on top of all the regulatory compliance, so you can focus on what you enjoy doing, which is running your business. You don't want to be spending time, researching journals and changes and legislation, because it happens all the time.
What are some of these other emerging trends or innovations in HR and payroll that these startups should be paying attention to?
I briefly touched upon it before. It really goes back to what the feedback that the employees and that the employers are receiving from their employees. And it really revolves around mental health services and fertility services. We've seen a huge uptick in terms of what the PEOs are doing with the insurance carriers to provide these solutions to the employees.
Yeah, I love that. And then let's kind of switch into some cost saving strategies here, right? One of the big sales points is let's kind of walk through some aspects of that, starting with kind of the workers' compensation costs. Like, what is workers' comp, for a founder out there who's now just scaling up their team, from just the co-founders to now like hiring their first 10 or 20 employees? Like, what should they be thinking about as they start scaling up the organization and workers' comp?
Yep. So in addition to medical savings by joining a PEO, oftentimes you'll save anywhere from 10 to 40% on workers' comp premiums. And the reason why is simply because you're joining a much larger group than your own company, right? So similar to how they have the buying power on the medical side, they also have the buying power for negotiating really competitive mods on the workers' comp side. So, and it's also the same thing for ancillary, right? Things like dental insurance, vision insurance, life insurance, LTD. All of the costs of these insurances are drastically less than if you, as a small business owner, were looking to go and provide these coverages to your staff.
And that goes across the gamut. It's really this group buying power that you're getting by using someone like ExpertPEO to find that right provider for you. That's really the group buying power. That's unlocking all these savings across not just workers' comp, but payroll, benefits, everything.
They also have a 401k offering. Each one of the PEOs partners with a 401k. It's something that you can decide to take their solution or not. If you really like your 401k plan, great. You can leave it where it is. The reason why I love partnering with the PEO and taking their 401k offering is that you join their multiple employer plan. So you no longer need to file a Form 5500 on an annual basis. You no longer need to pay a third party administrator to prepare this 5500. And everything is seamless, right? So to do a 5,500 is going to cost you probably $1,500 a year, and it's going to cost you some of your time, which is now eliminated when you take the offering through the PEO.
What is the ideal size of a startup to start working with you, and when do they get too big to work with you, if they ever get too big?
So a couple aspects of that question. We have 13 PEOs that we work with. When you have 2 or more employees, there are 4 PEOs on our platform that will work with 2 or more. There are additional 3 PEOs on our platform that will work with 5 employees or more. And then your entire universe opens when you reach 10 employees. In terms of outgrowing the PEO, it really depends on the geographical location of your business, right? How many different states you're in. Typically, as a rule of thumb, it's kind of like the ideal PEO client is 2 to 250. But if you're operating in 30 or 40 different states, we've seen groups as large as 1,500 that want to join a PEO simply because they can't keep track of all of the state-specific requirements.
Right. So you're kind of getting rid of that complexity for them when they have 10, 20, 25 states to take into account anytime they may hire somebody or have to manage all this complexity.
Yeah, a really big pain point that I often hear is around paid family leave, because each state has different policies, right? So it's a very complicated space, and it's impossible for one person to know each state-specific rule, right? So each PEO will have a paid family leave team that when an employee needs to go out on leave, they simply contact that team and they walk them through what the process looks like for them to start getting compensated when they're out on leave.
And how do you kind of work with your client on an ongoing basis, call it annually, to ensure they're getting the best cost savings? So imagine I signed up and I got 5 or 10 employees, and a year later I've doubled in headcount. Now I'm 10 to 20 employees. Do you meet with them and just kind of reassess everything? And how does that work?
So we're really your long-term PEO consultant, right? Our job is, and we're simply not putting you onto a PEO and then you never hear from us again. We get actively involved from a high-level overview, right? Let's say that for some reason you're not getting a timely response from your payroll specialist or your account manager. We get involved and we remedy the situation. Where we really provide value is at the time of renewal. We have a large book of business with each of the PEOs that we work with. We know what a fair and accurate renewal looks like. And if it's something we don't agree with, we'll kick it back. And ultimately, if the PEO won't come down on their renewal, then we go back out to market, we create competition, and we'll say, if you don't match this pricing, then we're going to leave. Now, obviously, we don't want to be leaving PEOs every year, and our goal is to find you the right PEO for them. And typically, that's what happened. It is rare that a group is going to join one PEO one year and then move the next year. Also, at the time of implementation and during contract negotiations, I'll almost always be able to negotiate a year 2 rate cap on medical. So we know that we can control your medical costs over a 24-month period. At the end of the 24-month period is typically then when we go out to market.
So let's take a look at, do kind of a deep dive in your approach and value prop. What's sets you apart from other PEO advisory firms. I'm sure there are some out there, and there's other platforms out there that you probably also partner with, but it's kind of like a co-opetition. I think Deal comes to mind, and a few other.
Yeah. So probably about 99.9% of the people in the PEO space, they are internal sales rep that work for the PEO, right? And they can only sell their company's product. They call themselves consultants. You're not a consultant if you're just selling one company, right? So we do have a few competitors out there that do provide similar services to us, but we really are far and few between.
Why not just go with one of these big platform providers that is a software first, like Deal or one of these other ones?
Yeah, so like Deal we work with, we use them a lot for international EOR. But so, I've been in this space for a long time, since 2016, and we have really strong relationships with the PEOs that we've decided to partner with. So the advantage of using a firm like ours is, the relationships that we have. And the knowledge in this space. The PEO space has evolved a lot since 2016, when I started ExpertPEO, but it really comes down to, the really strong relationships that we have with the partners that I work with. And I know each PEO inside and out.
And back to your background, we didn't really talk about how you got into this space and kind of what your background was. What's your origin story for working in this very, very niche thing I never even heard of, and probably some of our listeners are like, what is that?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it. I started my career off in public accounting, and I spent 4 years there, and I have my CPA, and I've always had an obsession of working with employers to help them reduce costs. I just wasn't obsessed with putting numbers in boxes and really wanted to do something a little bit more meaningful for the client. And when I left public accounting, I joined a boutique wealth management firm. I quickly realized, I liked investing my own assets, but not others. I felt like I was really more of a therapist than anything. So I wanted to get back to doing what I loved, which was working with business owners to help them reduce costs. So I kind of stumbled upon PEOs. A mentor of mine told me to look at them back in 2015. And I just saw how fragmented it was and how the model made no sense. How you had to call up 4 different PEOs, 5 different PEOs, fill out 5 different sets of paperwork, deal with 5 different people. It's just a really antiquated model. And it's amazing that now we're in 2024 and it really hasn't changed. People still work for the PEO and they just try and sell their company's product, and it's never going to result in the best possible outcome for the client.
Yeah, that's what I liked about your guys' approach when I met you guys is I can relate to the buyer versus seller broker model. I worked in commercial real estate in my 20s when I didn't know what I wanted to do in life, when I washed out of Wall Street. And, we'd represent, you kind of like, it's kind of like when you buy a house, right? You kind of want somebody to represent you as a buyer and as a seller, right? And so you have somebody working for you. That's what struck me about you guys is you're definitely on the buy side. So you're helping these companies. You're not selling the companies on services. You're helping them buy the best service, which I think is a really unique approach.
Exactly.
Instead of just like, because so many startups probably just go with the default. They're just like, I don't know. I saw a deal billboard on 101 in San Francisco. I guess that sounds good. They do workers' comp and stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe they're not getting the best price for their size or for the complexities of their location and things like that.
Yeah, exactly, Brian. So I can't stress the importance of competition, right? Competition is a good thing, right? It's going to ensure that you're getting the best value. And, we speak to founders all the time and we say, why did you go with JustWorks? Why did you go with Rippling? Why did you go with TriNet? I spoke to a friend of mine. That's who they use. So I called them and I got set up. And when you do that, you're going to lock yourself into higher pricing. It's as simple as that.
So what's next for you guys as you look out, 5-10 years for ExpertPE?
I've added some headcount, and we just have such a good story to tell. We have such a unique business model that is so beneficial to employers, right? My background, as we mentioned, I'm a CPA, and I have a lot of accountants as friends. And, when they learn about what I'm doing and what my business is, they always say the same thing: where have you been my whole life? I don't have to deal with an ADP sales rep anymore. I don't have to deal with a paychecks rep anymore. You're going to handle this process for me, and I'm going to have them stop hounding me. Our plan is just to continue to grow organically. We don't do cold calling. We don't do cold outreach. Everything that we do is through referrals, right? And that's how we've grown our business. We'll continue to grow and continue to hire people. And it's more so really on the service side where it's like, you got to make sure that one, you can find them the right PEO, but you have to be able to service the client and ensure that they continue to have a good experience.
So for all the founders out there that are listening, they're like, ooh, yeah, I have this problem. How can they get in touch?
Yeah. So on LinkedIn, Kevin Dolph, at my website, ExpertPEO.com. It's actually a really good resource. I have plenty of client testimonials on there, case studies, goes into what our process looks like. So the website is a great resource. And then, of course, you can just reach out to me via email, Kevin@ExpertPEO.com.
Awesome. Well, let's wrap up with a quick rapid fire.
Cool.
What's the first thing you do to start your day?
Generally get up and go for a walk. Think about everything I want to accomplish in the day. Get some fresh air.
That's a good habit. Name one benefit trend you think will dominate in the next year.
Besides mental health? Yeah.
I mean, that's probably it. Mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, one of my clients is a non-for-profit in the mental health space, and their mission is just amazing. What they do, they're in high schools and universities and colleges, and they touch over 5 million students a year. And it's a really impactful mission. And just seeing their work, it's you just never know what someone's going through, right? And it's important to always keep that in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a friend recently try to take his life. He was depressed. He told me he was depressed, and I'm like, get some help. And he was talking to somebody, and he survived, and he's recovering. But it was shocking, right? It was really shocking, and you never think that it'll happen or somebody will do that, and you just don't know where people are. So be nice to people and try to
it's
get
not
them the
hard
help
to
they
be
need, because you just never know. Yeah,
like I said, it's not hard to be kind.
And in my industry, I have to say no 99.5% of the time, and it's really hard to be kind and tell people their baby is ugly. Your startup sucks, and I don't want to invest. I can't say that, right? But
you got to let them.
You suck, and I don't believe you'll be successful. I can't say that, right? And I never would. But it's just like, it's usually some derivation of like, hey, it's off thesis, stay in touch if we can be helpful. Or, hey, it's too early, stay in touch. The hardest ones are like when we're like a week or two into due diligence, and we're starting to dive in, and it's like, I'm seeing stuff here that wasn't in your pitch deck, and I didn't realize that you were so capital inefficient, or I didn't realize this or that, or there's just some red flags that come up. And now it's like, okay, now we're like a month or two into the process, and now I have to say no. And that's the worst.
It eventually always comes out, right?
All kinds of
Whether
ridiculous
it's sooner
things.
or later, and you just hope you can.
That's why we do due diligence. So they're like, I thought you were investing. I'm like, no, we were in diligence to invest, and I saw things I didn't like. Well, your process is ridiculous. Your process is so arduous for your small check. And I'm like, people just start throwing shade at me and Team Ignite. I'm like, hey man, I'm a fiduciary of other people's money. I can't just be like lobbing money around. I got to like actually look at stuff and be careful. And that's just going to willy-nilly like fire around 25, 50K checks, not consider what I'm doing.
Yeah. And for someone to say that to you, for writing a small check, it's like, for someone to say, you're writing a small check, it's probably not someone you want to work with anyway, right? Because at the end of the day, you're handling someone's money regardless of the size.
Yeah, I do run into this problem with our small check at Team Ignite. And I'm like, well, Team Ignite has thousands of people that can help you. Yeah, we're a small check, but we're a huge network. And, we have as of this recording, 1,500 VCs that come to us with us. We have 6,600 people in the database that want to help startups on Team Ignite. And I'm like, you don't want to take a small check? Like this is kind of a rant, but this has been coming up this week, so it's been bothering me. And by the way, you only have 100K left in your round. So what do you care anyway?
I guess they want to say that they're subscribed.
Yeah, they tend to be. You know what I realize as I kind of look back at some of these situations, and it doesn't happen often. It's like once or twice a year. I'll look back and I'll be like, oh, these guys are like kind of prima donna types, right? They think they're really special.
Yeah.
A lot of founders do. They have to like believe in themselves so arduously, just like, I am going to be the best ever at this. But there's also this like a miscalculation, I think, that occurs where, okay, you looked at my profile, right? Done a lot of amazing things. We have this Team Ignite thing. We have 150 startups and all this network power, all these discounts, programs, resources, including you guys. And you don't want to take our little check. It's like, you're not getting it and I can't get you to get it. So like, I guess we're just not going to work together. Yeah, thankfully this only happens like once or twice a year. What's the most satisfying part of helping companies streamline their HR?
Eliminate waste, improve upon inefficiencies, reduce costs. Right? It's really that simple. It's a lot of pain points that employers go through, and they ultimately don't know where to turn. Right? And we have calls day in and day out with groups that move to a PEO or they move to a solution that wasn't right for them. And it was because they weren't working with someone who's truly a consultant and is going to understand their needs right? Because when you work directly for a company, whether it's a Paylocity, a Gusto, or a PEO, those people are just trying to sell their product. They're not trying to do what's best for the client.
What's one book every business owner, startup, founder should?
I love Barbarians at the Gate. One of my closest friends, his father coined the term, so I'm a little impartial, but it's a great book.
That's a classic business book. Yeah, really good. Required reading and like an undergrad business program that I went to.
Yep.
Or a graduate program for that matter. What's your favorite productivity hack?
Besides shortcuts in Excel, I think that's arguably one of the most useful tools in my profession is being able to quickly do things in Excel. And it just saves so much time as opposed to if you don't know what you're doing.
What's your favorite Excel shortcut? Like I know lots of them because I was an analyst and a finance guy like you. Like what's your favorite? I
use like Control Shift Plus to just move things around all the time. Alt Tab, Window D. Those are all popular ones that I use. But yeah, the Control Shift Plus for just moving.
I haven't done the Control Shift Plus.
Yeah.
Like I need to move this cell over here. Control Shift Plus. There you go.
Control X, Control Shift Plus.
Interesting. Instead of doing Control X and then Control V to paste it, you would just do Control Shift Plus. It was just like, hey, I just need to move this data around. Huh.
Yeah, because it actually creates a new row or column. It doesn't like copy it into an existing column. So saves a lot of time.
Interesting. I'm going to try that. That's interesting. I didn't know that. Done a lot of spreadsheeting in my day.
Yeah, same here back in public.
You always learn something. I'll answer my favorite productivity hack right now is using ChatGPT to write everything for me. So instead of typing out an email, I will copy the email into ChatGPT and I'll say, hey, we need to write an email to respond to this. Here, like, is what I think we should say, and blah, 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 blah. Just diarrhea of mouth, just like kind of getting all my thoughts out. And then it just crafts a perfect email. I read it and copy and paste it back into Gmail and I'm good to go. And that's like been my go-to lately. I also use this program called TextBlade, and it's a Chrome extension, and it has these little 2-letter shortcuts. So I have like these 50 to 75 things I have to say constantly as a VC. Hey, thanks for reaching out. Pitch me here. Oh yeah, here's my fund deck. Like it's just all these common things that I have to say over and over and over again. So this TextBlade app sits in my Chrome browser. It's like $30 a year, $5 a month, something like that, $3 a month. And it just gives me this 2-letter shortcut for every single thing I need to possibly say. Even scheduling the podcast. Hey, you should come on the podcast. Or like, hey, we've now scheduled the podcast. Hey, we've published the podcast. Repetitive things I have to say over and over again.
So I do something similar in the iPhone with the shortcuts. So like I end just about every email. Please let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you soon. And I just type in PLMK and it just, produces it. So it's a great efficiency hack.
Oh, Apple has shortcuts built into their mail client on the mobile device. Wow, that's pretty compelling. So that's the one thing I don't have my TextBlade in my mobile Gmail, and it's really painful to reply to anything on LinkedIn or Gmail from my mobile device. It's like so painful.
You can set up every shortcut just like you're using that program on your computer with your phone.
Oh, wow. I need to look into that. That's amazing. What's a PEO feature every small business should prioritize?
So besides the obvious, which is taking advantage of the medical benefits, what I think a really unused benefit of the PEO is that almost every PEO has what's known as a health advocate. So a lot of times employees get medical bills and they have no idea what they're looking at. Right. And they can reach out to the health advocate. The health advocate will explain their bill, and they'll also work with the provider and the insurance carrier to have your bill lowered. Right. So they'll negotiate your bill on your behalf. And genuinely, it results in a really successful outcome. So it's a great tool that all employees should take care of, that they should take advantage of.
Nice. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm sure the founders out there and the audience will get a ton of benefit from this. And I really enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me.